Captain Thalia Reed never expected her first diplomatic mission to the Nyxarian homeworld to end in either marriage or death. Yet here she stood, in their crystalline temple of eternal light, facing exactly that choice. The day had started normally enough. As Earth's newly appointed military liaison to the Nyxarians, she'd been exploring their capital city's architecture, particularly fascinated by their famous light-capturing structures. The buildings seemed to breathe with inner radiance, their surfaces shifting colors with the movement of their binary stars. Thalia's dark curls clung to her neck in the humid air as she followed the winding path up to what she thought was an observation platform. Her navigation device had marked it as a public space, perfect for understanding how the Nyxarians had mastered the art of solar energy collection. The higher she climbed, the more the air shimmered with strange energies. Her Earth Force combat training kept her alert, but nothing in her briefings had prepared her for what she found at the summit. The chamber was awash in rainbow light, its crystal walls pulsing with power. In the center, suspended in a beam of pure energy, floated Ambassador Kavor, his silver skin glowing with an inner light. He was deep in what appeared to be meditation, his ceremonial robes discarded at the chamber's edge, leaving him in what Thalia would later learn was the sacred state of light communion. She froze, realizing her terrible mistake. This was no observation deck. It was a sacred meditation chamber. Before she could retreat, Kavor's eyes snapped open, their iridescent purple depths meeting her brown ones with shock. "You've witnessed the light communion," he said, his voice carrying both authority and something else, fascination. "Do you understand what this means?" Thalia raised her hands apologetically. "I'm so sorry, Ambassador. My nav system must have malfunctioned. I had no intention of intruding on a private moment." "Private?" Kavor's laugh held no humor as he descended from the energy beam, quickly donning his outer robe. "This is far beyond privacy, Captain Reed. You've witnessed a Nyxarian in their most vulnerable state, our direct communion with the star energies that gave us life. By our most ancient laws, there are only two paths forward." Thalia felt her stomach drop. "I'm listening. We must either join in permanent union, binding our life energies together." He paused, his expression unreadable, "or both face execution at the next solar alignment. Our laws regarding the sacred communion are absolute." "That's completely unreasonable," Thalia protested, her diplomatic training warring with her military directness. "I'm here as an Earth Force representative." This was clearly an accident. "The laws predate our contact with other species," Kavor explained, moving closer. "They were written when our people first learned to harness stellar energy, when witnessing the communion was considered the deepest form of intimacy possible." A commotion from below caught their attention. The temple guards must have detected the unauthorized presence in the sacred chamber. Quickly, Kavor gestured to a hidden alcove behind a crystal formation. "Hide there while I speak with them. But understand, Captain Reed, this situation cannot be undone. You have until the next solar alignment to decide, union or death." As Thalia concealed herself, she could hear Kavor speaking with the guards in their musical language. Her universal translator picked up fragments about routine meditation and security protocols. She found herself studying him from her hiding spot. The way his silver skin caught the light, how his movements seemed to flow like liquid mercury. When the guards finally departed, Kavor returned to her hiding place. "We have perhaps one planetary rotation before questions begin to arise. I suggest we use this time to discuss our situation." "I have a better idea," Thalia said, her tactical mind racing. "Why don't we look for a precedent? Surely in your entire history, there must have been other accidents, other exceptions." "You think like a warrior," Kavor observed, a slight smile playing across his metallic features. "Yes, we have archives, but accessing them would require sneaking you into the temple library. Another sacred space." Well, Thalia matched his smile with a determined one of her own. "I'm already facing execution. Might as well make it worth my while." As they made their way through hidden passages in the crystal walls, Thalia found herself studying Cavor more carefully. She'd dealt with him in diplomatic meetings before, but always across formal conference tables, both of them wrapped in layers of protocol. Now, in this strange intimacy forced upon them by circumstance, she was noticing things she'd missed before. The way his expressions shifted like light on water, the grace of his movements, more fluid than human, but with an underlying strength she recognized from her combat training. Most intriguingly, the way he kept glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking, with an intensity that had nothing to do with their diplomatic relations. "Tell me something, Ambassador," she ventured as they paused at an intersection of crystal corridors. "If we do find a precedent, a way out of this, would you be disappointed?" Cavor's pause was telling. "My personal feelings are irrelevant, Captain. As your diplomatic counterpart, my duty is to help you understand and navigate our laws." "That's not an answer," Thalia pressed, surprising herself with her boldness. "And I think we're a bit past diplomatic titles, don't we? You've seen me at my most mortified. I've seen you in your most sacred state. Maybe we could start with names." The look he gave her then was unlike anything she'd seen from a Nyxarian before, vulnerability mixed with something that might have been hope. "Thalia," he said softly, her name taking on new music in his voice. "We should focus on the archives." But as they continued their clandestine journey through the crystal heart of the temple, both knew their fates had already begun to intertwine in ways no ancient law could have predicted. The temple library was unlike anything Thalia had ever seen. Crystal shelves stretched toward the distant ceiling, each containing not books but intricate light patterns frozen in transparent matrices. Cavor explained they were memory crystals, storing thousands of years of Nyxarian history and law. Each crystal must be activated by touch, he demonstrated, his silver fingers trailing along a shelf. Where he touched, light bloomed and spiraled, forming complex patterns that his people could read as easily as humans read text. "The difficulty will be finding references to the communion law without alerting the archivists to our presence." Thalia moved closer, fascinated by the dancing lights. "How do you organize all this? There must be millions of records here." "By stellar alignment," Cavor replied, his voice dropping to a whisper as footsteps echoed from a distant aisle. "The communion laws would be stored under the first alignment, when our people first learned to harness stellar energy." They waited in tense silence until the footsteps faded, pressed close together in the narrow space between shelves. Thalia was acutely aware of how Cavor's silver skin seemed to pulse with its own subtle light, how his breath stirred her hair when he spoke. "This way," he finally said, leading her deeper into the archive. "The first alignment records are in the oldest section." As they searched through ancient law crystals, Thalia found herself distracted by the way Cavor's fingers danced through the light patterns, graceful and precise. She'd always considered him attractive, in an alien way. But now she was seeing past the diplomatic mask to something more intriguing. "Here," he suddenly announced, activating a particularly old crystal. "This is the original communion law." "Wait." His expression shifted from hope to concern. "What is it?" "The law wasn't created to punish accidental witnesses," he translated, his purple eyes scanning the light patterns. "It was established to protect them. In our early days, those who witnessed the communion without preparation often went mad from the raw stellar energy. The choice of death or union was meant to be merciful, either a quick end or a guided integration into our energy practices." Thalia processed this. "But I feel fine. The light was beautiful, but it didn't drive me mad." Cavor turned to her with new intensity. "Exactly. You shouldn't have been able to witness my communion without severe mental trauma. Unless..." A sudden commotion from the archive entrance cut him off. Voices approached, including one Thalia recognized as High Counselor Vaxna, Cavor's superior. "The energy signatures are clear," Vaxna was saying. "Someone has accessed the first alignment records. In light of the disturbance at the communion chamber, this cannot be coincidence." Cavor pulled Thalia behind a massive crystal column, their bodies pressed together in the narrow space. She could feel his heart racing, a rhythm slightly faster than human normal. "There's something you should know," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. "Before you appeared in my communion, I was meditating on a very specific question." "What question?" Philia breathed, trying to ignore how right it felt to be this close to him. Whether humans and Nyxarians could truly bond, not just diplomatically, but on an energy level. "Some of us believe your species carries traces of ancient stellar manipulation abilities, dormant but present." The searching voices drew closer. Philia's combat training screamed at her to run, to fight, to do something. But she remained still, captivated by the intensity in Kavor's eyes. "When you witnessed my communion," he continued, "you should have been overwhelmed by the stellar energy. Instead, you resonated with it. I felt it, Philia. You don't just see our light, you understand it." Before she could respond, a new voice joined the searchers. "The human must be found," declared Elder Raylon, the temple's highest authority. "This violation of our most sacred space cannot go unanswered." "We need to get out of here," Philia whispered. "If they find us in the archives, we'll have violated 2 sacred spaces." Kavor's expression turned mischievous, an oddly human look on his alien features. "There is another way out, but you'll have to trust me completely. And it will involve more light communion. You want to do that energy meditation thing. Now, not meditation, transportation. We can ride the stellar currents stored in the crystal walls, but only in a state of communion. It's how we built these structures in the first place." Philia looked into his eyes, seeing past their alien color to the sincerity beneath. "What do you need me to do?" "Take my hands," he instructed, twining his silver fingers with her brown ones. "Open your mind to the light, just as you did in the communion chamber. Let it fill you, guide you." As their pursuers drew closer, Philia felt it. The same strange resonance she'd experienced in the communion chamber, but stronger now, more focused. Kavor's energy merged with hers, silver light dancing between their joined hands. The world around them began to fade, becoming pure light and sensation. She heard gasps of shock as they were discovered, but it was too late. The crystal walls opened to them like water, and they dove into the light stream together. Traveling through solid crystal should have been impossible, should have been terrifying. But with Kavor's energy wrapped around hers, guiding her through the stellar currents, Philia felt only exhilaration. They emerged on a high balcony overlooking the city, both breathing hard from the intensity of the experience. "That was," Philia struggled to find words. "Impossible," Kavor finished. "A human shouldn't be able to navigate the light streams, yet you did it as naturally as any Nyxarian." He was still holding her hands, his silver skin glowing where it touched hers. "Perhaps the ancient laws aren't as unreasonable as we thought. Perhaps they recognize something we're only beginning to understand." Looking into his iridescent eyes, feeling the lingering resonance of their shared energy, Philia found herself wondering if being bound to this fascinating being would really be such a terrible fate after all. The news of a human navigating the light streams spread through the Nyxarian capital like wildfire. Philia and Kavor had barely settled in his private quarters within the diplomatic wing when the first summons arrived from the High Council. "They're divided," Kavor explained, pacing the crystal-lined room. His silver skin reflected the changing colors of sunset through the transparent walls. "Some see your ability to share communion as a sign, a fulfillment of ancient prophecies. Others view it as a threat to our very way of life." Philia watched him from her perch on a hovering meditation cushion, still buzzing from their shared energy experience. "What prophecies?" Before he could answer, the door chimed. A young acolyte entered, her silver skin still bearing the pearlescent sheen of adolescence. "Ambassador Kavor, Captain Reed, Elder Raylon requests your immediate presence in the Chamber of First Light." As they followed the acolyte through the temple's winding corridors, Philia noticed the way other Nyxarians stared at her, some with awe, others with poorly concealed hostility. Kavor moved closer protectively, his hand occasionally brushing hers in a gesture that sent little sparks of energy between them. The chamber of first light proved to be a vast dome at the temple's heart, its crystal walls inscribed with spiraling patterns that seemed to move of their own accord. Elder Rylon stood at its center, his ancient silver skin weathered to a deep platinum hue. "Step forward, both of you," he commanded. As they approached, the patterns on the walls began to pulse more intensely. "The chamber recognizes your shared energy signature." "Fascinating. Honorable Elder," Kavor began, but Rylon raised a hand for silence. "Before we address the communion incident, there is something you both must see." He touched a control panel, and the chamber's patterns coalesced into a three-dimensional star map. This chart was created during the first alignment, when our ancestors first mastered stellar energy. "Note this symbol here." Philia gasped. The glowing mark was unmistakably a DNA double helix, a human DNA double helix. "Impossible," she breathed. "How could your ancestors know about human genetic structure before our species even met?" "Because they had seen it before," a new voice declared. High Counselor Vaxna emerged from the shadows, her expression severe. "In themselves." Rylon nodded solemnly. "The ancient records speak of a time when all our people could share communion freely, when we were not bound to careful ritual and preparation. But something changed. Our connection to the stellar energies began to fade. Only through strict practice and ceremony could we maintain it." "Are you saying humans and Nyxarians share common ancestry?" Kavor asked, his hand finding Thalia's almost unconsciously. "We believe your species retain different aspects of our common heritage," Vaxna explained. "We kept our physical connection to stellar energy, manifested in our silver skin and natural bioluminescence. Humans kept the genetic key to unrestricted communion, the ability to merge with stellar energies without preparation." The implications staggered Thalia. "That's why I could witness Kavor's communion without going mad. Why I could navigate the light streams." "Precisely," Rylon confirmed. "And why the ancient laws demand either union or death when communion is witnessed. The laws remember a time when our peoples were one, when such witnessing meant souls were compatible at the deepest level." A commotion outside the chamber interrupted them. Guards rushed in, their energy weapons charged. "Elder, High Counselor, you must evacuate immediately. Insurgents have breached the temple's outer defenses." "The purists," Vaxna spat. "They would rather destroy everything than see our peoples reunited." The chamber's walls flashed red with warning lights. Kavor pulled Thalia close as energy blasts struck the outer crystal barriers. "The purists believe in maintaining absolute Nyxarian genetic purity. They've opposed all contact with humans, but this, the proof of our shared heritage, would destroy everything they believe in." "How many are there?" Thalia asked, her military training kicking in. "Initial scans show at least 30, a guard reported. They're using illegal energy disruptors to break through the temple's crystal matrix." Thalia turned to Kavor, an idea forming. "The light streams, could we use them to outflank the attackers?" "It would be dangerous," he warned. "Combat while in communion has rarely been attempted. The emotional intensity could make the energy streams unstable." She caught his face between her hands, feeling the familiar spark of energy at the contact. "Do you trust me?" His purple eyes met hers with absolute certainty. "With my life." "Elder, High Counselor," Thalia addressed the leaders, "get to safety. Kavor and I will handle the purists." "You risk everything," Rylon warned. "If your communion fails while in the streams, then we face death together," Kavor finished, "as the ancient laws decree." As the leaders were evacuated, Thalia and Kavor stood together in the chamber center. Around them, the crystal walls shuddered under the purists' assault. "Ready?" Kavor asked, extending his hands. Thalia took them, feeling the now familiar surge of shared energy. "Ready. Let's show them what happens when you mess with ancient prophecies." Their consciousness merged with the light streams just as the chamber's outer walls began to crack, their combined energy signature blazing like a newborn star. Riding the light streams with Kivor was like dancing through liquid starfire. Thalia felt their combined consciousness flow through the temple's crystal matrix, aware of every current and eddy in the energy field. Through their shared perception, they could sense the purists' positions, their disruptor weapons creating dark disturbances in the stellar flow. There, Kivor's thoughts merged with hers. The main group is approaching the sacred archives. They mean to destroy the ancient records. Thalia's military training meshed with Kivor's knowledge of the temple's architecture. Together, they formulated a plan without needing words, their shared communion allowing for instant understanding. They emerged from the light streams behind the first group of purists, their combined energy signature manifesting as a blinding flash. Before the attackers could react, Thalia and Kivor moved in perfect synchronization. Her Earth Force combat training complemented his traditional Nyxarian energy techniques, creating a devastating harmony of physical and stellar power. Abomination, the purist leader snarled, firing his disruptor. You corrupt our sacred communion with human taint. Kivor deflected the energy blast with a gesture, his silver skin blazing. You speak of corruption while attacking our most holy temple. Your fear has blinded you to the truth written in our very genes. Thalia stood before a mirror in her preparation chamber, hardly recognizing herself. The past cycle had brought changes none could have predicted. Her skin now held a subtle metallic sheen, while patterns of stellar energy occasionally danced across her surface like aurora lights. More significantly, her consciousness had expanded, permanently attuned to the stellar energies she once thought exclusive to the Nyxarians. The genetic reawakening continues to spread, Dr. Naren reported, reviewing data on a crystal tablet. The elderly Nyxarian scientist had been studying the effects of Thalia and Kivor's union on both species. Every human who's undergone the compatibility testing shows latent stellar manipulation abilities. Your transformation was just the beginning. And the Nyxarians? Thalia asked, adjusting her ceremonial robe. A stunning creation that combined her Earth Force dress uniform with traditional Nyxarian light-gathering crystals. Increased genetic stability, improved communion abilities, and the first natural births in 3 generations. Dr. Naren smiled. The purists' worst fears and greatest hopes proved the same. Our peoples truly are stronger together. A soft chime announced another visitor. High Counselor Vaxna entered, her usual stern expression softened with what might have been pride. The Earth delegation has arrived. Your parents are being escorted to their places of honor. Thalia felt Kivor's warmth through their bond before she consciously processed Vaxna's words. His mental touch carried love and reassurance. He knew how nervous she'd been about her family's reaction to everything. The past cycle had been a whirlwind of diplomacy, science, and cultural exchange. What began as a simple choice between marriage or death had evolved into a movement that transformed both societies. The first human Nyxarian Compatibility Center had opened on Earth 3 months ago, with more planned across both worlds. Captain Reed, Vaxna's voice drew her back to the present. Before you join Kivor for the ceremony, there's something you should see. They led her to the temple's highest observation deck. Below, the plaza filled with a stunning mix of humans and Nyxarians. But what caught Thalia's breath was the sight of several couples like herself and Kivor, humans with silver-kissed skin beside Nyxarians, who showed subtle earth tone variations in their traditional metallic coloring. 17 unions so far, Dr. Naren reported proudly, each activating more of the ancient genetic patterns. The children of these unions will be born with full access to both heritage's strengths. Thalia touched her own abdomen, where new life had just begun to stir. She and Kivor had only recently confirmed she was carrying twins, the first human Nyxarian children conceived naturally. Through their bond, she felt his joy echo her own. It's time, Vaxna announced as the binary suns reached their apex. The ceremony itself was a blend of traditions, just as Thalia and Kivor had become a blend of their peoples. They met in the Chamber of First Light, where their journey had truly begun. Kavor's silver skin glowed with joy as he took her hands, their energies automatically reaching for each other. Elder Raylon presided, his ancient voice carrying through the crystal acoustics. We gather to celebrate not just the union of two beings, but the reunion of two peoples too long separated by the stars. In Captain Thalia Reed and Ambassador Kvor, we see our past and our future combined. As they exchanged vows in both Earth Standard and Nixarian, the temple's crystals resonated with their shared energy. Each word carried weight beyond mere sound, rippling through the stellar currents that bound their souls. From this day forward, they spoke in unison, their voices harmonizing in a way that made the crystals sing. We pledge ourselves to bridge the divide between stars and worlds, to help both our peoples remember what they once were and discover what they may become. The moment they sealed their vows with a kiss, every crystal in the temple blazed with unprecedented light. Through their bond, Thalia and Kvor shared a vision of the future, their children growing up in a society that celebrated both sides of their heritage, leading the way for a new era of human-Nixarian cooperation. Later, at the celebration that followed, Thalia found a quiet moment with her new husband on their favorite temple balcony. The binary suns were setting, painting the crystal city in impossible colors. "Any regrets?" Kvor asked, his arms around her as they watched ships from both worlds dance through the evening sky. Thalia laughed, feeling their unborn children stir with tiny pulses of stellar energy. "About accidentally walking in on your meditation. Best diplomatic incident of my career." His silver fingers traced patterns on her star-kissed skin. "The ancient laws proved wiser than even we knew. They didn't just preserve our past, they protected our future." Below them, more couples were arriving for compatibility testing, humans and Nixarians, drawn together by the promise of awakening ancient powers. Each successful union strengthened both peoples, healing genetic drift in the Nixarians, while awakening dormant abilities in humans. "We should thank the temple's faulty navigation system," Thalia mused, leaning back against Kvor's chest. "Without that wrong turn." "There are no wrong turns in stellar currents," he quoted the old Nixarian saying. "Only paths we didn't know we were meant to find." As if in agreement, the crystal city blazed with evening light, Earth's deep blues and Nixarian silver merging into something new and beautiful, much like the future their love had helped create.